It's easy to look around and notice everything wrong in your city. In this podcast by Every Neighborhood Partnership, join Grace and Andrew as they invite friends, activists, pastors, leaders, and city workers to discover what's good in the neighborhood. Join us for insightful conversations that will encourage you to see your city and its people in a new way. You're listening to What's Good in the Neighborhood. Today, we are continuing our series of A Good Neighbor. We're chatting with Pastor DJ Criner of St. Rest Baptist Church about the church's role and responsibility in building stronger neighborhoods. Pastor DJ is an absolute innovator, pioneer, visionary when it comes to allowing his church to be part of the catalyst of building stronger, equitable, flourishing neighborhoods. He cares deeply about place and where their church is located. So we hope this conversation encourages you, maybe it convicts you, and also just opens your eyes to what the church's role could be and is within their space.
Well, welcome to What's Good in the Neighborhood. My name is Andrew File.
I'm Grace Berg.
And we have a delightful friend here, Pastor DJ Criner.
What's up, everybody?
DJ is pastor of St. Rest Baptist Church in Fresno, a historic church that's unbelievable. And as we started to kind of think about what is the church's role in being a neighbor, I thought right away of St. Rest, just because they are a church that is not only, I think the best thing is it's thoughtful about innovative solutions. And so there's some really awesome new things that they're working on. There's big dreams and aspirations. And a church that is really trying to take serious their place in a neighborhood. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you come to Fresno? I actually went to college with your wife.
Oh, man.
But, we don't need, and your wife is amazing. She should be on this podcast, not you. Sorry.
Well, I really appreciate the fact that you're, giving more kudos to Jessica than you're doing to me. Hey, Jess, I love you. I appreciate that, bro. I felt like you've been more fond to Jess than you have been to me, even though I've known you longer, and we're more Jesus connected. But my wife is incredible. I kind of share a little about Jess because she's probably one of the main reasons why we do all that we do because of her background in mental health, dealing with mental wellness, but. Yeah, I came to Fresno from a long way away, Stockton. So I flew into Fresno to go to Fresno State in 2001. And what's interesting is that I've always been connected to Fresno in some sort of way and to the St. Rest Church because our church and St. Rest were like sister churches due to our denomination and our connection through our district associations. And so when I came to Fresno, what's interesting is we were always told by our coach at the time, there's one area you don't want to go into or we don't want you in. That's in Southwest Fresno. And being an African-American kid from the hood in Stockton, whenever someone tells you not to do something, that's kind of what you do. So I went to Southwest Fresno, and I hit places like Hunt's, like Hole in the Wall, like Chris's Meat Market and places like that. And I was like, oh, wow, this reminds me of home. Because in Stockton, it's almost what Mayor Audrey said back in the 90s, like a tale of two cities. You see a huge difference between North Stockton and South Stockton. Well, when I came to Fresno in 2001, I saw a big difference between Southwest Fresno and Fresno State area, where you saw a whole lot of resources, entertainment, and you saw the lack thereof, but a whole lot of brownfields and a whole lot of poverty-stricken areas, right? So I fell in love because I was familiar to it. Fresno State was a very trying experience because I was fresh out of Stockton, fresh out of a very faith-based religious background of being in church every single day, and then coming to Fresno State where you're not in church at all, and you can pick and choose if you want to come. And that probably was the major place where God was like, I'm separating you now from this trained religious background of only knowing church to really knowing who I am in him. And he took me through a serious wilderness experience, man, where, I was down to my last, homeless, sleeping in my car, kicked out of school. And I think it was at that low moment where I hit rock bottom that I discovered that Jesus was the rock at the bottom. united with St. Rest after been going a couple times and kind of worked my way up what's called kind of the chain of command of youth pastors to interim pastor to senior pastor.
Okay. Wow.
How long
Amazing.
ago was that then that you became the senior pastor?
Man, it's been 11 years. And Andrew just made me feel like I'm real old. Like when we went to college, like, bro, we're only in our 40s, man. Like, don't make it seem like we're, ancient.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little gray here, though, so it is.
Dude, I got it a
catching
long
up.
time ago, and I think it was because of my kids. Like, my daughters are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about that evolution as a pastor. I mean, was your church? So you mentioned your early church experience. Was the church itself mindful of place and community, or what was that evolution for you as you stepped into the reins of St. Rest? How did your theology of place, theology of a church being, actively present in its neighborhood, how did that grow? Or
Man, that's interesting because growing up, always being in church, you always saw church almost as separate from community, especially in a Southern Baptist African-American church predominantly. In Stockton, our church sat in a very poverty-stricken area, almost drug-infested homelessness park that was right across the street from the church. And we visited that park once a month. I believe it was third Sundays. We would visit. And crazy enough, the church parking lot was full of Mercedes, Cadillacs, low-riding cars, cars that looked amazing. Women wearing fur coats and we had suits on, And it was weird because we're going to an area where the predominant demographics of the area were low-income Hispanic, and we didn't have any of that representation within our church. So we would go across the street to feed after church on a third Sunday, and what we're feeding is bologna and cheese sandwiches. And we're thinking we're doing something big for our neighborhood, not realizing that, they're coming to eat it, but we don't have any relationship with people. And crazy enough, some of our homes that we have now in neighborhoods, we think we're in a neighborhood, we really don't even know our neighbors because that's kind of where we've become as a society, where we're pushed away and more isolated. The church was practicing that almost in the 90s. And we thought we were doing something major when it came to evangelism and getting to know our community. Coming to Fresno, I saw that Southwest Fresno mimicked that. St. Rest was doing food distribution, 3 times a month, picking up food or having folks come into the church or come into the parking lot to feed them. But as far as a handshake, as far as looking and seeing, well, how many of the percentage of our community is a member of the church, it was very, very low. It was people driving in. My pastor, Pastor Scott, kind of taught me the importance of networking, community, and Pastor Riggins taught the importance of community-driven ministry. It just really wasn't being practiced as much. And I'm I'm weird. I know I am. I'm a strange dude. I can't wear a suit every day. I don't like to. I sweat, and when I preach, I like to, I still listen to hip-hop sometime, country because of Beyonce's weird self. I like football. I like having fun. And my deal is, if we're a church, what good is it for us to be only active on a Sunday, but no one from the community knows you? So if you go to the liquor store down the street and you ask the gentleman at the liquor store, who's the pastor of that church, and they don't know who the pastor is, you're not really doing community work. So I think the importance of a church being in the community is really being a lighthouse that people know they can come to even when it's not dark. You know what I mean? They have resources they can come to, but they also know they can trust you. And in Southwest, I believe we're trying to be that lighthouse, man.
What were those first steps you had to take as you took an audit of where St. Rest was at and those 3 times a month? And you're like, oh, was that pretty quickly, something has to change? Mm-hmm. Or, what did that look? Yeah.
Well, you got to remember, I was in the church the whole time.
Right.
I was sleeping in church because I didn't have gas to get home. People thought I was really dedicated. But no, dude, I have no gas to get home. And I know that in the back, this sounds bad. Don't record this. In the back, I know there's food in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the old ladies have put in there.
There's
so
there's some pasta salad in there
I
somewhere.
can run in there and just grab a plate, and when they come out, thank you, Lord, for this 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread,
Yes.
So being in there, I would almost form relationships with community at Edison High School. Gaston wasn't even built yet, but you had Edison, King Elementary, Kirk, Lincoln, and knowing those kids, because I'm always there, because I don't have gas to get home, I end up kind of forming those relationships. So stepping into the pastoral role, We didn't do a SWOT analysis of the community. We analyzed our strengths, weaknesses, opportunity internally first. And then we changed internally because in order for our community to want to be a part of the church, we needed people that look like community to be in leadership roles. Because a lot of people think that being a multi-facet, multi-generational, multicultural church means that people who are multicultural go to the church. That's not what it really means. They need to have representation in leadership of men, women as well, people who look like community, that are part of the community, because in order for your church to feed and be able to aid the community, you have to have people that are part of the community that tells you what community needs. And sometimes we try to tell the community what they need instead of listening to community to tell us what we really need, what they need, you know? So it was swift. We had a couple of hiccups where folks, very traditional.
That's what I was going to ask. How'd that go over with your congregation?
Because there's also like you mentioned, like there's a power dynamic, or like we like being the helpers.
Yes,
we like the ones with the ideas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the story of the Good Samaritan, right? Like we're okay as long as we can still ride on the donkey and the Samaritan walks us to get. But it's different when we're walking and it's different when the Good Samaritan is walking and the person that's injured is on top of the donkey. We're walking them, right? And that's the mindset where we were trying to change our church dynamics to kind of think about. Like, the hierarchy of leadership is not as important as the ministry that's done on the ground. So shifting that pyramid, the upside down kingdom that Crable talks about, right? Where we're not looking at those who are on the bottom serving those on the top. It's really those that were supposed to be on the top serving those on the bottom to lift them, to show this is what the kingdom of God really is all about.
You just worked in a Mennonite resource. I love that. I love that.
See like I did that?
Yeah.
Black dude bringing in Mennonite stuff.
Multicultural.
Well, I'm so
That's why I love you. That's why I love you.
Let's go, man.
So folks that don't know, I've heard a little bit of like the short-term and long-term vision. You all have built now a kids facility that has a community space, playground. You've built an amazing food hub.
Thanks, bro.
That has can do training of classes, can actually be a kitchen where people can prep and learn food skills. And then I've heard some aspirations of green space. And so maybe give us a little snapshot of like, how did that vision of a place that's meeting really tangible needs, how did that come together? I know there's a ton of partnerships involved in all of this.
Yeah, man.
Where do you want to go?
Oh, man. So I'll say it like this. My favorite movie is Lion King. You already know that. Like, Grace, my favorite movie is Lion King. Like, I promise God.
Did you see Mufasa?
Bro, sis.
How was it?
So,
It's so good.
So, side note, 2 Sundays ago, we as a church went, all right?
Oh, fun.
And we didn't reserve the theater. So we told everybody, get your tickets. We're all going to go see Mufasa, right? There were 100, I believe in Manchester, there was 151 seats. We had like 147 of them. And I promise to God it was weird.
Those other 4 people went to church that day.
That day they did, because we were singing, and I was like, Saint Rest, so we all walk in, and we took over the entire theater, right? So I felt sorry for anybody that went there and saw a whole bunch of folks from church. Some of them had big hats on. I'm sorry if you couldn't see, all right? We took over the theater. But in The Lion King, do you remember that part where Simba comes up to Mufasa at the beginning and says, Dad, you promise? And Mufasa wakes up, stretches, yawns with this roar, and then takes Simba to see Pride Rock, and they like step on top of this quote-unquote balcony still, and they see the entire Pride Rock. And then Simba asks, what about that shadowy part over there? And Mufasa says, you must never go there, my son. And then he asks Scar, and Scar says, call it the elephant graveyard. Only the bravest lions go down, and Simba explores it anyway. That's what we did. Like, we were like, dude, to everyone outside of Southwest Fresno is the elephant graveyard. And are we comfortable with Pride Rock looking at Southwest Fresno as the graveyard? Like, are we comfortable with Fresno seeing Southwest Fresno as the graveyard? Because there was opportunities to move and go north where there are more resources. And we like, bump that. Like, we're going to bring the resources of the north to Southwest Fresno. So we have opportunities to like build a sanctuary. Like, that was in the plans before I became the pastor. I'm like, dude, the sanctuary is fine. Like, it's cool. Like, what's the point of building a bigger, grander sanctuary that mimics a cathedral and people in our community don't have gas or food because there's one grocery store in the entire 5.7-mile radius of Southwest Fresno. Check this out. One grocery store, 27 liquor stores. Something's wrong with that. No banks, no credit unions, but there are 7 payday lending stores. So you can go cash a check at a high interest rate, but there is no credit union or bank that reinvests in those rooftops in your community. So a kid can go and get food, but in order to get the food, he or she has to pass by bottles and bottles of liquor, Budweiser, beer, Hennessy bottles, and all that good stuff in order to get some food, and that food is really Doritos or Takis. And if they want fresh produce, it's not going to be fresh tomorrow because it's old, nasty produce. But in my community I live in North Fresno, there's 6 grocery stores, like in a 1.5-mile radius. No parks, so there's no green space, so the lack of air quality is 20%. I mean, a 20-year life expectancy gap. But we know that from that study that was done 4 or 5 years ago, right? So we're like, look, guys, we can either build a bigger building that eventually no one will come in this building because West Fresno will die and the residents will look at this like an elephant graveyard. And a graveyard that is an elephant graveyard meant at one point there were healthy elephants that were there, but because of contaminated soil, they wasn't able to eat, so they died. Or we can look at the soil that's in our community and say it's not contaminated, it just hasn't been kept in a while.
Hasn't been cultivated.
Come on, sis. Come on, you preaching already. So let's till this doggone ground that we have, and let's reseed it, water it, and it may take some time, but gosh dog it, when this thing grows, it's going to look just like Pride Rock or even better. We'll have pride in this rock that's on this grounds. And that's what we decided to do. And I'm grateful that we had a church family that was like, Pastor, let's do it. Like, let's go. Like, we've been waiting to move. Let's do it. And then folks invested in it. And now the grounds that we're on is starting to resemble a little bit of what North Fresno has a whole lot of. It's just in one area. And the goal is now we can maybe have that be contagious. And thank God we have a school now, a state-of-the-art community college. Starbucks is coming in, you know what I mean? Like, our community is getting excited because they're not just getting like these mom and pop stores only. They're not getting a Dollar General, but they're getting like state-of-the-art companies that are coming in saying, you know what? West Fresno's not an elephant graveyard. It's actually prideful. Well, and we're grateful in that.
And I think I so appreciated your voice too, to name, because one of the gifts I think you have is you're obviously an amazing storyteller.
Oh, thanks, bro.
And you have cast a vision too of just the intentional systemic disinvestment in Southwest. I also thought, as you were sharing, of the Wi-Fi you brought in, that's, you got your own tower, and it's like, these are intentional decisions corporations are making.
Shout out
to not invest in Southwest, right? Literally not run
fiber
optics in the ground because they're like, we're not going to get our money back.
And also you have folks that are uneducated or uninformed, and the Bible says without a vision, the people perish, right? So people just don't know. And so they don't understand. And I'm putting this out there, and I know there's major companies because they love you and they're always listening. I hope you don't lose like any. But
major sponsors.
Put it out there.
I'm sorry, bro, but gotta give it back to you.
Yeah.
All right, so there were companies who were profiting off of poor people, and we didn't know it until COVID hit, when no kids are able to go to school and they have to access Zoom in order to do schooling. And watch, bro, Grace, this is what we saw. No joke. Kids were sitting on the curbs to access our Wi-Fi at our church because there were no Wi-Fi towers in Southwest Fresno. And then we started doing like some serious research and discovering, shout out to Lieutenant Governor Bustamante, that, wait a minute, the price that I'm paying in Southwest Fresno for internet,
for crappy internet.
Come on, bro.
Yeah.
It's super different from what a cat in North Fresno is paying because they're reaching and pulling from so far away. Yeah, sis. And if you can't afford it, you can't get it. So kids were like suffering. And the air quality, remember at that time, they were terrible because of the California wildfires that were going on. So kids were outside hawking and coughing because they can't
outside on your curb.
On the curb. And we're like, bump that. We got to do something about this, man. And so that was the push. Like, if we don't do it as a church, that our calling as righteous folks is to call out unrighteousness and not just take people's tithes and offerings every Sunday, but to show them, look, what you're investing in the kingdom, we're giving you a taste of it on earth. What are we? And so that was like that change for our community. Like, okay, we can give folks knowledge that you don't need to pay more. They need to pay more to invest in a community that they've never invested in. Because people here deserve the same amount of amenities as anybody else in another part of town.
You mentioned earlier that you're hopeful that it'll be contagious, like to other churches. So while you're doing the thing and like on the ground doing the work with your people and your congregation and your neighborhood, what's your hope/critique of like when you look at other churches and you go, what's your responsibility to like the people around you?
Yeah, I'm grateful that so many churches are and have been doing it, maybe just not on the same level, but are doing it. And for some reason, he gives us a stage in order to get it done. And we're almost piggybacking off of the shoulders of previous generations that have been doing it, just didn't have the platforms of social media, Facebook, and all these other tools that we have today that can broadcast or put on a global scale what we're doing privately or on a smaller scale, right? But then there are some that feel like, you know what, just like in the civil rights era of the 60s, they were criticizing Dr. King for marching. And you have the picture right up there, right? And yeah, we're looking at the picture like, wow, there's a whole lot of clergy that are there. But imagine how many clergy wasn't there. Like how many spiritual leaders were not there that were like, that's not our platform. That's literally what they told King.
Literally like 70% of the church was like, he's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy. Yes. And we celebrate him today. You know, Monday is a major day. Yep. But back in those days, they were like, you know, you're called to preach the gospel in the pulpit.
Stay in the pulpit.
How dare you leave Dexter Avenue to go out and march on a bridge in Selma, you know? And King is like, no, I have a platform in order to use it so that systemic change can be done because God gave me the voice to do it. And part of what we are trying to do, Pastor Lewis, you got Brad Bell that's doing stuff, you know, and folks think because he's up north, he's not. Brad Bell's doing a whole lot of stuff because he has financial resources that are assisting churches in Southwest Fresno, and he's not using it as a media conglomerate to say, look at what we're doing, right? BT, maybe a smaller church on size with St. Rest, but his voice, if y'all ever heard BT Lewis talk, he's way louder than me, right? To say, you have to have the courage to open your mouth and speak. Because God told Jeremiah, if you don't speak and say what you need to say to kings and princes and governors, I will embarrass you in front of them. I did not give you the calling to cower and cry and hide. I gave you the calling and a voice to speak. I didn't put you at the table to eat. I put you at the table to make room for those that can't sit at the table so they can get to the table and eat what they've been eating forever. That's our call. And all we have to do is just give people the gall to be able to speak up and say it, name it, claim it, and then go and get it.
Yeah, it's that conviction as a leader, that feeling of uncomfortability of like what you just said. Yep. If I don't do it, who will?
Exactly.
And that tap that we go, I don't want to deal with that. I'll stay in my pulpit. I'll be safe.
Right.
Or I can just stay in like my little area. When that's the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely. And Grace, what's so crazy about it is even when we think about our call, like our great commission that all of us, whether we're evangelical, whether we're Southern Baptist, Apostolic, AME, we all adhere to that great final call that he gave us in the Great Commission. And the first word he says is go. After he says, hang out in Ephesus a little bit or stay in Jerusalem, just so I can give you that gift,
Spirit,
that comforter.
Yes.
When that comforter comes, I need you to go. Because if you go, they'll come. Come on, man. And all of us are waiting for them to come, but we keep literally trying to disciple and evangelize to the same people that have been discipled and evangelized for 40, 50 years. And there are so many that want to know that Jesus gives
their bread, their literal bread.
They're on earth.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think as I look at the projection and the vision that you've anchored, I just think there's a real temptation for you and for a lot of churches to begin to move and to follow the people.
Yeah.
And what I see is people do move to go to the next resource. And that would be a really easy temptation. Most of your folks don't live right around the church, right? You're not necessarily a neighborhood church anymore. You have a lot of folks driving, right?
We have a lot of people driving, but
you do.
We have a lot of people that
awesome.
are like walking to church.
Because you've been neighborhood anchored.
Yeah,
yes,
that's the only reason why.
That's the only reason why,
man.
And I think like the temptation to just say, we're going to own this place. Like we're going to invest here. Just props. Like continue to do it. Like I think you guys you've been huge supporters of us.
Always.
And it means so much. As you look to the future, what are your kind of, it could be around this topic. It could just be something else you're dreaming about or thinking about. What are your hopes for St. Rest? What are your hopes for the Church of Fresno? Like, you can take those separate or together, or
I think they go together because I think sometimes we run the risk, like you said about owning. We'll attempt to own that we are the church, and we are part of the Church Universal. We're just a branch. We're just an arm, just a piece of it. We're not like. If it was up to me, and I know this sounds crazy, I don't want to get any bigger. Like, I don't want more members. I'm sorry, I don't. Like, I just want to do more work. I want to be more effective in the community that we're called to serve in. I think the Lord gives us a calling that sometimes we try to call ourselves to other areas to make us a bigger name. Like, I don't think we're called to be a St. Rest Madera or a St. Rest Philadelphia. Like, I don't think that's our call. And if God changes that, so be it. But I think we have too much work to do where we are to make the church universal a grand movement, I think that's the reason why Paul says he writes to Corinth, then he also writes to Thessalonica, then he also writes to Ephesus and Colossia, because in Ephesus there's a different issue than is going on in Colossia, right? And there is a different name that needs to speak to that identifies and understands that. I think we're called to the community that we're in, and even if that community changes, that doesn't mean our call has changed, So on our grounds, I believe the Lord is telling us, okay, there are facilities that needs to be built on the grounds that I gave you. Mind you, he gave us, that we've been sitting dormant on for years. And after 40 years originally of acquiring the property, after the 40 years when we first broke ground to finally build something, that was our youth center. And I don't think we're done. We want to, if the Lord allows us, which I believe is our call to do, is to build almost like a community hub or an event center. And that's intentional. Many of our kids who will go to Edison High School and now that are at Fresno City College, they don't have a place that they can hold their prom in their own communities. Wow. You know what I mean? How beautiful would it be for them to be able to have a prom in their own community and it resembles a state-of-the-art area, and the church doesn't rob them or kill them on the amount of it, but they're served in the community that they're in. To have a mental health center in the community that's in the same area that is done in. We have a large dance ministry. We also have folks that dance in our community, their own dance studio in that area where we're teaching faith-based community work that has the sentiments and the roots of the gospel, right? Where we're now controlling, okay, you can have your prom, but that song right there we're cool with. We don't want you to kind of hear, Sexy Red in this. Like, we're good with that. You can hear Red, but it's his blood.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Come on.
I think that's kind of tight. We also want to build an airnasium, which is a gymnasium with the walks knocked out.
Yes.
That if a family wants to do a quinceañera, or because we have a large percentage of Hispanic in our community, right? We want to be able to have them have it right there on the grounds where they're not charged an astronomical amount, because our community is really underserved. I want to do a soccer field because, of course, that meets the needs of our community. It would be cool to have a soccer team in Southwest Fresno or Fresno City College to be able to have a team, and their team practices on the grounds in Southwest Fresno, so folks in Southwest, those kids can see what they want to become, right? And then, of course, that green space we talked about, man. Like, yeah, the dream is to one day have a campus that meets the needs of everyday life, recreation, food, that our community is in need of, where they don't have to leave Southwest in order to get what they need. They have it right there.
Yes. Which is just what every other neighborhood has.
I believe so.
You're not asking for anything, insane.
No.
Yeah.
Just asking for justice.
That's right.
Right? To be on the same equal playing grounds as everyone else, and a community that has always lacked the trust of our city because to them promises are made or were made and were not kept. We're trying to get our community to see, yeah, that was then, but it's a new day. Yeah. I believe we have a mayor that believes in Christ. I've talked to him. He's kept his word numerous times. And why not take advantage of that opportunity while we have it, is that we have somebody that really believes and loves, I believe, every side of town. I mean, I'm not a politician, so and I've walked with him. I've hounded him on keeping his word, being more than just a politician, but being a God man. And so why not use the resources that the Lord has blessed the community with to make that community just as great as every other community in our city, so that Fresno can probably be the only city that's seen as every community looks the same, has the same, and gives the same resources every other community has. That's the goal.
So good. Thank you so much.
You got it, sis.
Yeah, this was so sweet. And I hope encouraging to people who are listening that if you're not a Jesus follower, you don't know the Lord, that the church does not just sit on its hands, which I think is a lot of hope. And then also that maybe if you are a Jesus follower, you're convicted by the way that you are interacting with your city, your people, and not treating it like the elephant graveyard.
That's good.
You know? So good.
I need to go see Mufasa. So,
you haven't seen it yet?
No, I haven't. I do love Disney movies, though. So I'm totally.
You should take your boys.
Dude, I'm sending you
Disney
tickets.
movies.
I'll pay for the tickets to the family. I got you, bro. Right after this, I'm gonna pay for you.
I'll get on that donkey. You know.
Come on, Hakuna Matata, brother. Hakuna Matata.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to find out more about EMP, you can visit us at everyneighborhood.org or follow us at EMP Fresno. Every Neighborhood Partnership and this podcast exists to activate, equip, mobilize, and transform here in Fresno and beyond. If you liked what you've heard, please share and review what's good in the neighborhood wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.